This is a longer video. If you want to skip around, you'll find timestamps to all the chapters below. There's so many different ways of working. All the musicians that we've spoken to carve up their day in different times, have different sort of sense of the highs and lows of the work process, respond to pressure in different ways. Look at some of that, listen to some of these brilliant people to guide us through the different ways that you can keep sort of productive and sane and enjoy the process of making music. Writer's block. Okay, so this is a sort of famous term. But I think we all have a slightly different sense of what it might mean. It could be, you could go for a whole year without coming up with a good idea, perhaps. Or it could be just a really bad day. But we asked all the composers whether they ever had writer's block. I mean, these are all people who are really successful in their field. Have they actually experienced this feeling?
I think maybe even last year it happened, like a huge writer's block where I got really stuck and frustrated with myself and maybe a bit burnt out. So I think for me, the best thing to do is go away from the page. So rather than just staring at something and hoping an idea will come, just try and immerse myself in things I enjoy, or even take a step away from music, go for a walk, go watch a film, just have nice in-depth conversations with friends, and then come back to the work and try and get inspiration. Because I often find that sitting down and staring at something or hoping something's just going to turn up out of the air just makes my frustration worse. So it's quite nice to dive into other things and other worlds.
I do find myself in moments where I'm like, I don't know where to go with this. And I might go, okay, I'm going to leave this and go work on something else. I might go take a walk. I might leave it for weeks. It really depends on the timeline.
Give yourself something to do that doesn't occupy all of your brain space, but occupies some of your brain space, like doing the washing up, going for a walk, going to the gym.
With writer's block, I think maybe people feel like they should be doing this, they should be that. There are no shoulds with music. It's like, if by doing something else, maybe you're feeding something that will nourish the music. That
I think sometimes I'm in a permanent condition of writer's block, in the sense that it's quite unusual for me to run into the studio thinking I know exactly what I'm going to do. I don't often have that. I mean, of course, if I get commissions like making a film soundtrack or something, then that's much easier because there is a sort of skeleton to work on top of. But most of my work isn't like that. I originate it out of nothing and for no particular destination. And it is a luxury, but it's also quite intimidating. You know, that every day you have to think, okay, here's another day. Yeah. What am I going to do on this particular one that makes it worth being alive? Yeah. So I've really spent a lot of time thinking about how you deal with that problem. I don't know if you've ever seen my pack of cards, Oblique Strategies.
I was going to mention them. Please talk about them, yeah.
Well, really, they are, in a sense, an attempt to deal with this issue of how do I set off into an interesting new direction.
I think as a composer or whatever it is you're doing, making sure that you are balanced between just life stuff and writing is really important. So make time for yourself. I think I've overlapped a lot of projects and taken on a lot of work which doesn't allow time for myself. And you need the space to help you write the composition. You need to relax to help you write the composition, really.
So having a break isn't necessarily a negative thing. It's not about not being able to work. And actually, I find that often when I take a break, I will just go to make a cup of tea, and before I've even reached the kettle, I've gone, oh, I know what I'm going to do after I've had my cup of tea. And it's actually created a great new idea for me. So for me, I'm not a morning person. I tend to give myself really boring tasks like renotating something or just sort of correcting some problem that I'd created for myself the night before, and do all the more creative stuff in the afternoon or the evening. But everyone's different.
I'm a morning and an afternoon person. I'm not an evening person. Again, finding your time of day. We're all different. And when you want to work, or you feel alive and awake, that's usually the best time to work.
So I tend to kind of have to be in the studio probably at around about like 10, but then I probably won't start writing until 4.
And I've just recently talked to some other composers, and they find like getting up really early, getting up at like 5:30, and getting into the studio first thing, 6 a.m. onwards, there's like a period of like no distractions where you can get work done. That's a kind of cool thing that I'm actually thinking of exploring, even though I'm not an early bird. I'm quite a late night owl.
Me too. Look, it's really good to get real about this. Not every minute of every day is going to create some brilliant thing. There's going to be ideas that you throw away. There's going to be moments where you feel like you perhaps wasted time, but maybe it's not time wasted.
I do spend a ton of time in my studio, but yeah, some of that time might not be productive. I might be distracted and going on social media, or maybe doing stuff that's not music related. So I've been trying to be more aware of that, and trying to, especially with doing my solo music, I'm the manager and I'm the time manager. So it's up to me when that's gonna get done and put out. So you kind of have to make deadlines for yourself.
So I think I've just really given, I know that I can do 4 hours of really good work a day, but that has taken me about 15 years to sort of realize that.
I think you also have to understand that you have days that everything works well and days that they don't work well, and that's part of it and part of the mystery and the process.
But remember, if you're playful, if you're alert, and if you're open to new ideas, the chances that you will find something that will inspire you are so much greater. Some people are very confident, some people are not so confident, some people are confident some of the time and not at other times. All these people can be brilliant musicians.
I have the propensity as well to start, and the fear in me will shoot right up, and I feel an intense pressure to sort of deliver instantly a genius bit of work. And it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes I think takes patience. So generally, I think when I'm sitting down, if I feel that fear rising, I'll just try and focus on one thing, one mood. How am I feeling? I'm feeling a little bit stressed about this. Okay, so I might start with a bass line that is just like one note but in a rhythm, and then with my other hand might just start playing some chords over it. So really kind of tricking myself almost into thinking that I'm writing, and then realizing that I am.
Also, the very, very beginning, it's very scary. I find that open, that blank canvas extremely scary, and knowing that you've got all this work ahead of you, but without the work and without the time, you're not going to be able to make the magic.
I've always had quite a lot of confidence that I could make something of a situation. I have been in some circumstances where I thought, I really don't understand the way this situation works. So then I try to find a way of being useful, like I make some tea or something else. You can always be useful. You can always sort of think, what does this situation seem to need that I could give? And it sometimes isn't musical. It's sometimes social, for instance, or diplomatic or something like that.
And I just, heard a podcast about this. Yes, there is this element of procrastinating because maybe out of fear or like, I don't want to deal with all this work, but also that time, sometimes your brain is absorbing and your brain is piecing ideas together. So I think in terms of like perspiration versus inspiration, I think at the beginning I'm perspiring a lot, just worrying about everything because there's so many unknowns. And sure, we have self-doubts, but with every project that we complete and we do, and every piece of music we create, we put another feather in our cap and say, I did it, I got through it, I can handle it.
Not everyone experiences this, and not everyone experiences it all the time. But Ed O'Brien had something really interesting to say.
This is my experience, and a writer sent this to me when I was in the middle of the sonic trenches of making music. So stage 1, this is great. Stage 2, this is okay. Stage 3, this is shit. Stage 4, I am shit. Stage 5, this is okay. Stage 6, this is great. Like there's an arc. Whatever comes out at the end has to have been through this kind of robust process. And I think that's the true artist's way.
Music isn't just a mental act, especially if you're playing an instrument or you're singing. That's already physical. But there's other aspects too.
Do kung fu, have done a bit of boxing, try to train quite often. I wouldn't have been able to perform for an hour every single night on minimal sleep had I had a bad diet, had I been partying.
I don't know, other things that I find helpful is just in the balance of life is to try to have a little bit of exercise during the week and then have a little bit of social if you can.
Yeah, I kind of work myself to exhaustion, which obviously isn't a good thing. So it's quite hard for me to switch off, and it's very important to switch off. Sleep is very important.
Sleep is really important. Food is really important. I'm always on the quest of getting it right, but what I have realised in terms of a process is that in order to be creative, I have to be so relaxed. And that means that my space is really sacred, so my studio space it's really important that feels kind of good.
I think that's one of the things that also can lead to a lot of people's struggles with mental health is the precarity of the work they're doing, the highs and then the potential lows, but then also the party, because all of that stuff lends itself to the come down. And it's anyone in the music industry will have themselves had highs and lows, but we'll also see people that weren't quite able to get up from the come downs, unfortunately. And if you want to make sure that you're not going to be in that position, for me, the physical fitness is more about mental health than actually anything else, much more, because the release of endorphins, all of that stuff just puts you in a completely new space, that expanding of where your limitations are.
We're all different, and music inherently has moments of real high when you're feeling great about the work you're doing, and real lows where maybe there's pressure or stress, or maybe you're a person who struggles with their mental health.
There are a couple of things that could be mistaken for writer's block that I wouldn't call writer's block. I actually think are more kind of serious than writer's block, which are burnout and depression, if you suffer from it. I struggle with depression. And at that point, you really need to sort out the kind of underlying issue before you then try to write. And that's a whole process in itself. And I think make sure you're not mistaking depression for writer's block. And also similarly, make sure you're not mistaking burnout for writer's block. Because if you're just going every day, constantly trying to come up with ideas, like you just get, like, and if writing is just your life, it's gonna become very kind of encapsulated. Like you're not gonna be able to think outside the box because you're putting yourself in a box.
When you have experienced traumas in childhood, it alters your brain. And so the ability for the brain to produce serotonin is limited. And serotonin is vital for the regulating of panic, anxiety, and fear. Now, for me, I was able at a certain point in my life, and I think still, but less so now, to use music as a sort of almost a replacement for serotonin, a way of calming me, the process of writing a song. It was obviously cathartic, but it also was a way to just calm my fears. What I think that then translated to, though, unfortunately, was still having that hyper anxiety when I wasn't doing the music or performing the music. It wasn't really until going on tour in 2019 that I was able to actually just submit myself to the experience and enjoy it. And you know, especially when you're singing about things that are associated with painful memories for you, try and enjoy what you're doing.
I don't know. So my relationship with fear is basically the thing that I've always had from when I was a teenager and writing music. And fear is really important, but also it can be crippling. And just understanding, if I was to talk to my 16-year-old self, I would say have patience, give it time, and don't be afraid, I think. But then do also be afraid.
So how did you, because obviously you're a working composer, you're managing to manage your fear.
Yeah.
What steps have you taken that have enabled it? Was there any key sort of things that have helped you kind of get a grip?
Personifying the fear, I sort of know that it is this thing that just walks with me. And we have now a relationship. And it knows when to leave me alone, and then it knows when I know when it's gonna grow, and I know that I need him or her for a bit. But also that it's not bigger than me.
If you are listening to something over and over again, or you've put in hours, you kind of get sick of it. So you're staring at this idea, which initially really in love with and happy to work on, excited about. I think, yeah, it's just the familiarity thing. You're just listening to it so much and you put so much time into it and you've been staring at it for so long that it becomes something that you're nitpicking at. And I think the best thing is to just carry on through to the end and then let it go and then see how it develops from there, how it evolves from there.
So revisit it, you mean?
Revisit it if you want to, but like give it some space and come back to it if you want to, or just accept that it is where it is and this is what you wrote in that moment.
It's a bit like going for a really long walk. You know, if you're doing like a 20-mile walk, you set off and you go, first 4 miles, great, this is brilliant. Oh, I'm out in the countryside, we've got the day ahead of us. By about mile 9, it all gets a bit sticky.
Yeah, there have been pieces I've written where I have got fed up with them and I've thought, oh, this just sounds awful. Yeah, and that can be quite disheartening. Yeah, that can be depressing. It's difficult. It's just natural. So, yeah, I think don't freak out when those thoughts come and just take a step back.
I've worked on an idea that you've lost sight that it was good. And what I've had to do is go back to the demos. And usually, again, there's been something about it, or there's a stage of it that you go, oh, it was sounding good there. So then that's a process of unpeeling and going back to that stage to when it felt good. And that requires a sort of rigorousness to go through the different development of the song, because you can add stuff and lose stuff. And that's happened a lot with Radiohead over the years. You know, you've gone down these sort of sonic cul-de-sacs and pathways and journeys, and you've had to come back. Like there's like the OK Computer, our third album, there's a song called No Surprises. And the version of that's on that album is the very first thing that was recorded for that album way back at the start. And we went through 6 months of tracking and different versions. And it was then going back to the original going, oh, the magic's there, you know.
Okay, so maybe you're interested in cinema, maybe you like books, maybe you like games, maybe you like visual art. But keeping engaged in that isn't necessarily just a distraction, you know, a nice entertainment. It could actually feed directly into the way that you write music. Do you see your visual work and your musical work intersecting now? Do they sort of merge, or are they very sort of siloed in your...
No, they're very connected. And quite a lot of the same concerns are in each one.
I often just turn to YouTube, and whether it's just watching something completely irrelevant and just giving my mind a bit of a break, or go watch a movie and see if that makes you feel like a song could come out of that.
Getting out and doing cultural things, going to see a gig or go to a museum or something where you're soaking up, culture and ideas, and that kind of percolates and might come out later. I just find that with experiences, sometimes I connect with emotions, and that comes through in music.
Well, I did a master's as well, also in the time that I was away, and it was useful in that it enriched my reading. It widened my references. James Baldwin has a quote where he says, "You think that your pain and heartbreak is unprecedented in the history of the world, and then you read."
I had frustration, so I've gone away, thought I'm going to work, and then I've been 2 days and nothing's happened. And then I said, well, what do I really want to do? Oh, what I really want to do is watch some documentaries on YouTube. And that's what I did for 2 days. That's what I really want to do. And then bang, those documentaries fed words that I needed.
A lot of people burn out if you do just work. You need to, and I think just because as a composer, you need to be getting inspiration from all of the other side of things as well.
So it's true that when you're experienced at writing music, this is a little bit easier because you kind of get a sense of when you're wasting time on an idea. It's a bit harder when you're just at the beginning of your career or in your sort of musical journey. But nonetheless, I just want to say that to throw out an idea, maybe a whole piece, but maybe just a section, don't see that as a failure. That's a natural part of the process, to discard even things that you've spent quite a lot of time working on. If you look at an artist like Prince, he's got literally hundreds of songs sitting around which he never used, and he certainly didn't see himself as a failure.
Really important, and even you might have spent 2 days on it, you've got to go like, it, this is crap. All right, we've done it, enough. Boom. From the moment of demoing to finishing could be 5 years. But I haven't worked on that constantly. There might be 3 years in the middle when that's happened on this record I've just made. Or there could be something, you're in a recording studio and suddenly a song comes out and you go, oh, this is it. So you put that down and you could have that finished an hour later.
There's a lot of ideas I've recorded or written out that are just staying in a little box at the moment. And maybe the thing is though about that, you can reject it now, but you'll come back to it maybe 3 years later and think, this works for me now and I know what to do with the material or the idea.
Yeah, the longest something's been on my desk that I've been working on, actually, I just released it on my third solo album. And I actually wrote the piano melody, the main bit of this song on the piano in 2004. I just continued to evolve and rework it and produce it with strings and then wrote lyrics to it.
I quite like revisiting pieces because as you grow, you develop as a composer with the more experience you get, and it gives you a chance to reflect and improve, those pieces that you wrote, 5, 6, whatever, years ago.
Sometimes you can go into your little bag of tricks of ideas that you've recorded years back and go, hey, is there anything that kind of relates to this? And that can be a nugget to start you on a new journey of a new idea for something. It's always good to have, ideas in your back pocket.
I genuinely like it all, but I think my real favourite part is the initial phase of inspiration, because everything's up in the air. That's where you start dreaming up the potential.
And I like the mixing process too. When you have a mixer, it's really nice to collaborate and just see it coming all together. That's a really cool part. But that, you can't have those until you put in all that time and effort in the beginning.
Things that I don't like, maybe writing it into Sibelius. I don't know. I don't really enjoy having to stare at the screen for so long and just make sure that it's all notated properly.
But yeah, it is a balance of things, and as you grow in your career, you figure out maybe there's a team of people or a person that you can collaborate with so that you can hand over some of the admin roles for them or whatever it is to make your life majority more of the music creating side of it.
The really boring part for me is putting the dynamics in, making sure everything makes rhythmical sense, and you know, you have to put as many instructions in as possible. But yeah, that's the uninspiring part.
I think my favourite bit of the process is taking the piece to musicians and getting them to play it. So exciting to just hear how they interpret what the boundaries and the rules that you've given them through the composition.
Actually, I know what's the hardest bit. When you suddenly see clearly what you've got to do, and it really is something that is absolutely exciting. You think, oh no, but I know all the work that involves. But once you've had that, once you've glimpsed what it is, that vision, you think, oh, there's no way back, I've just got it. And you know it could be really months of working something out, but at least you've got that flag ahead of you.
I think my favorite part is probably like the screening and the after party. I'm just kidding. Although it's a good moment because you're like, it's done, it's done.
One big thing which I was really glad that I was taught and told is not being afraid to write how you want to write. So just your own voice, so what you're interested in, not necessarily feeling like you have to sound like anyone else or there's a certain way of approaching composition. If you're more comfortable just making beats on something, then go for that. Or if you're more comfortable writing for guitar or on a guitar, then go for that. But I think there's always, sometimes you forget that your voice in composition is really important in developing that and being comfortable with that.
It's good to push yourself, but remember that you are you, you're not that person. So it's important to find your strengths and weaknesses, you know, and build on the things that you're not so good at, but not give yourself too much of a hard time as well.
Comparison can be the thief of joy. You know, you can look at a situation and think, you know, this person has a huge amount of money to spend on making their album. That's what I aspire to, that's the position I aspire to be in. But the reality is 99% of people are not going to be in that position. If you can carve out that niche, if you can forge that connection with people, do it, and you can just enjoy that and be happy with that.
I think the most important thing as a musician that I've learned recently recording is what's your truth, i.e. what do you really feel? What do you feel now? And that might seem quite simple, but that means that, you know, for instance, you can go on these sonic adventures, you can have your day, but how do you feel at the end of the day? How does this make you feel? Does this feel right to you? Great if it does. If it doesn't, be honest. Just because you put in all that time. And I think that's the key thing for me is like, as a musician is, what's your truth? How do you really feel about this? Because you can kind of fool yourself. We can all fool ourselves. Yeah, and believe me, I did it for 6 months. But the moment I had rejection, I woke up, I was just like, daily, what's my truth here? How do I feel about it? And then once you get on it's amazing how much power, how much energy you get from that one thing, and the music flows a lot quicker.
When I'm working and I know that I'm really at the centre of my own kind of truth, and that is coming out in the purest way, that is the most exhilarating feeling. And I just feel like I could write and write and write, and it's so exciting. And that, I think, those feelings are that's why we do it, I think.
I mean, all these things are life lessons in a way. And I think the thing about music that's, you know, this medium that we're working is so brilliant because music is the biggest bullshit detector. This is the creative process, but this is the creative process for anything, but it's a life process as well.